Awesome. So my name is Rishi. I'm one of the engineers at Black Sky. For those of you who don't know, I've been working on a project called Acorn. So this is just going to be a talk thinking through high level what Acorn is, the sort of thinking that went in behind it, and the kind of internet that we want to enable people to experience through this platform. So I still am not used to saying that I work at a social media company. It's a very strange experience when everybody hates the front page of the internet, whether that's like Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, or TikTok. Yes, Reddit sort of survived, but like it is not a fun experience to experience the internet. And a lot of the reason why I think that that's the case is because the internet connects you to the entire world, but it is primarily an individual experience. You're a single user when you log onto Twitter or Reddit or Instagram or TikTok, but you see all of this other content that these platforms have curated for you. And that's why being on Reddit feels like this. It feels like being in Times Square. You're walking alone, a lot of information is bombarding you. There's very little filter, you're surveilled, and you don't really know whether you're safe or whether a tourist is going to bump into you and ruin your entire day. So the question is, how do we change these defaults from a global connection but an individual experience? And a lot of the response to the internet being this way, oh, sorry. So the challenges of the internet being that way too are moderation being an incredibly hard problem. When you have global scale, as Juliet can attest, moderation becomes very difficult. You have to moderate for basically every single community. You have to hit the lowest common denominator. And eventually, when you're trying to moderate for everybody, you're moderating for nobody. You're going to end up making mistakes. And that's how you get things. And that's how you get things like Facebook supporting genocide in Myanmar or Instagram being uniquely bad for teenage girls, where when you have this very individual experience and a platform that only cares about boosting engagement, it becomes very hard to capture a lot of the good that comes from being connected to absolutely everybody. And so I talk to my friends a lot about this, and the primary reactions are just touch grass. Like, get off the internet. You don't need to be on there. It is not helpful. And so this is also the reaction that I get whenever I say that I work at a social media company. It's basically just stop. And so that is the touch grass response. What I characterize as the touch grass but woke response is smaller internets. So this is a lot of the dark forest theory where instead of being on this huge global platform, let's retreat back into Discord servers. There's a lot of atproto projects that are doing fantastic things that I characterize as like dark forests, whether that's Habitat or Roundabout that Blaine is doing, a couple others that I'm forgetting now. But you have that and you have retreating back to the group chats and the DMs. But the issue, let's skip a slide. Yes. But the issue is that the global feeling of social media has also enabled incredible amounts of organizing in a way that wouldn't be possible without it. We get things like the Me Too movement or Arab Spring or BLM, all of which obviously had significant offline components, but wouldn't have been enabled in the way that they were without it being a very online movement and letting people find each other in ways that they couldn't have otherwise. So what is the experience that we actually want out of the internet? I sort of think about Acorn and I think about that experience as box office seats or box seats at like a football game. What I mean by that is you experience the game that everybody else is experiencing. At the same time, you're in this enclosed space with the people that you care about. At any given moment, you can choose to turn away from the game and just talk to the people you care about. At the same time, you can participate in this global spectacle that's happening. As an example, at AppConf, Rudy, me, Marissa, and another member of the team, Clinton, went to a Kings Canucks game. And it was a mixture being at that game of Clinton, who played 14 years of professional hockey, narrating what was happening and us deciding that the Canucks were getting spanked too bad to pay attention and just having conversations amongst ourselves. That is a sort of experience that I want to enable on social media, but it's not something that you can do without there being a fundamental primitive of what a community means in a social media context. So this is sort of how I think about the juxtaposed experience of being one individual in this global social media context versus coming to something with a community. And Acorn is sort of the answer to that. And I think Black Sky already has built the primitive of what this looks like. So what we have on the left-hand side is the Black Sky community client. There's a lot that's packed into it that you don't really realize at first glance. Number one, the feeds that come with it by default are the Black Sky feeds. So the moment you're popped into it, a community member can participate in the conversations that are happening. And the trending topics are also Black Sky specific. At the same time, you still get access to the whole world of like every feed that is on atproto. It's not limited to Black Sky. But you also, as you explore this world, you're protected by Black Sky moderation. Black Sky moderation's mutes and bans all apply if you're using our client. And it also means that you are interacting with the whole atproto world through a Black Sky lens, which is what we want to enable other communities to do. So this is a screenshot of the homepage of Acorn. Our goal with Acorn is to take all of the infrastructure that Black Sky has built for itself and make it available for any community. So we already have a PDS, a feed, a custom client, a relay, an app view, and as the first talk can attest to, running the app view is terrible. You can talk to Rudy about that afterwards if you want to, but it is significant. It's probably the hardest piece of infrastructure that Black Sky runs. And we want to make it so that communities can have independence from Blue Sky or even from us without needing to run all of that infrastructure itself. So we want to take the burden of self-hosting and management off of communities. So what this enables is for you to run a labeler, which is moderation, for you to manage who's on your team and who can manage, for example, like feeds, who can manage moderation, et cetera, having all of that admin interface and config within Acorn. You can manage what your community looks like and what its identity is. And you can also just see how your community is doing. So to make it a little bit more concrete, every community has their own DID. So this is a fundamental that's baked into the primitive of how Acorn works. And this is also the reason why you don't have to rely on Black Sky. If we misbehave and you don't want to host your community with us anymore, all of the guarantees of atproto still come like bundled with this platform. And so on the left, we have like the onboarding for Acorn, where you have to enter your community DID that basically is the host of all of the data that you create for the community. And on the right-hand side, we have a very physical manifestation of what your community having its own identity looks like. So this is the identity tab in the Acorn platform. You can create your own custom client with this, and it automatically deploys for you. It deploys at a domain that we control, but you can bring your own domain too. So you could host this at the invite.us, for example, for a community that we're working with called the Invite. And that's just an example of like, what could it look like if you could customize the colors of like the Blue Sky or Black Sky client? You can bring your own brand, you can bring your own feeds, etc. So once you have a community identity, what does that give you? Once you own your own identity as a community, you can basically build a relationship graph. Who is in your community? How do they interact? Who should have control over the feeds, over the moderation? And also, you can start to build really interesting ways to authorize actions within the community. So these are two that we are building or are already built, which is, for example, for our pull list, we want to make it so that we can automatically check whether somebody's a community member, whether they're on our feeds, whether they're on our PDS, and only authorize them to vote in the deliberation that we do, if that is the case. And that's what having all of this infrastructure in the same place enables, and that's what we want to provide for other groups too. Once you own your identity, you can have your own social graph, and that also means that you can create interesting ways to moderate, for example, where we're doing a peer moderation approach to a lot of the content that we see, where if a peer moderator that has a specific badge reports a post, it automatically gets labeled. And that's a functionality that they have that a regular user would not. So you can verify your users, you can give them badges, and you can basically create an identity that's specific to a community. On the bottom, we just have what it could look like to issue community badges, whether somebody's like a founding member, a contributor, an organizer, a new member, etc. All of that is possible. And finally, once you have a community identity in a social graph, curation and moderation come sort of inbuilt with that. My hot take is that curation and moderation are the same thing. Curation is the act of choosing what content your members see. Moderation is the act of excluding content. So they're just flip sides of the same coin. And we want to make it so that when you host a feed, you automatically have all of the moderation features that you should be able to have when you host, which means take down posts from the feed, pin posts at the top of the feed so that it's the first thing that your members see. And as well as having context-aware moderation. So you can see, is this person a recognized member of the community? Do they have a given badge? Are they a long-term member before you take any moderation action against them? So what we're also working on is having these community policies automatically reflected in automated moderation. But the idea with Acorn is that you should be able to get to this end point of having the policies that your community cares about and the content that your community wants to see all manageable within a single interface. So if you want to learn more, you're more than welcome to visit our landing page. And I didn't dive into the technical details too much because I wanted to keep this talk a little bit more high level, but feel free to bombard me with questions afterwards as to how all the infrastructure stuff works. If you go to acorn.blacksky.community and you have a community that's interested in this, you can sign up to be on our waitlist. And we're actively onboarding communities off our waitlist onto Acorn starting this week. Yeah, thank you so much.